Does talking about sexual topics with your kids make you uncomfortable? That's probably true for many of us. We'd rather have an amputation without anesthesia. But is overcoming that discomfort worth it to protect your children? Scientific research shows that for children, the first one to discuss something with them, including sex, becomes the expert in their mind. So as parents, you should always want to be that expert rather than leaving it to their teachers or even their friends. In this series, we will ask, what on earth are kindergarten-age children being taught about sex in 40% of all of our public schools? Why do they need to know about things like consent and gender identity? Also, does your fifth grader know more about sex than you do as an adult? What's the rationale for teaching those at grade school and kindergarten level about sexual consent, gender identity, and healthy relationships? Remember, much of what 40% of our public schools are teaching our children directly contradicts what God has said in the Bible. And because most parents don't know where to turn for help, I've invited 3 guests to talk about understanding God's design for gender, sex, marriage, and family, and teaching your kids to treat those who hold different beliefs with gentle, Christ-like compassion without compromising biblical values. My guests today are Hillary Morgan Ferrer, who has a master's degree in biology and specializes in scientific apologetics, Amy Davison, a former Air Force veteran turned writer who holds a Bachelor of Science degree in religion from Liberty University and an MA in Christian apologetics from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and Lindsay Mendenwalt, who has a master's degree in ethics and apologetics from Denver Seminary, a master's degree in public administration, plus an earned law degree, and is an adjunct professor at Northwestern College in Iowa. Join us for this edition of the John Ankerberg Show. Welcome to our program. I'm John Ankerberg. We have 3 wonderful guests that we've already introduced to you, but our topic today is what are many of our schools teaching our children, your grandkids at school about sex? I'm talking grade school through high school. So it's an interesting topic. And Hillary, I want to start with you today. We're talking about children at home. They're learning from parents and from the school, from TV, movies, smartphones, all the things that we mentioned in the introduction. What are the things that they're learning?
Yes, I would say the sex talk has definitely changed from when we were a kid. It was very much about what's happening to your body as you're coming into adolescence, into puberty, and it was all about reproduction. What is happening specifically with reproduction? Because they knew back in the day, if you have sex, you have a baby. But now, babies are even just considered a choice. Oh, are you choosing to have kids? So what the sex education is really largely centered around in schools now is about how to give consent to have sex and who you want to have sex with. In fact, there's a lot of videos that we were watching that go out to the schools from a group called Amaze. And what they talk about is how to decide who you want to have sex with. And this is a completely different thing than what we were taught. It really is almost how to make it the most pleasurable. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost tips and tricks in that sense. And it's also about the different kinds of people. So even when we were younger, it was male and females. You will not even hear sex talked about without hearing them reference 3 different kinds, which is oral, anal, and vaginal. Yep. And your kids will be learning from us who is the person to talk about this based on who gets the most embarrassed when they talk about it.
And I want to jump in on that. The fact is we're talking to a lot of Christian parents out there, a lot of people that aren't Christians, but they're interested in what their kids are learning about sex. I want to know, are the parents having sex talks with their own children even before they go to school?
Well, Amy and I ask this at every conference that we talk at. We say, what were you taught about sex? And I think the most common answer we get is the reverse Nike campaign, just don't do it.
Yeah, don't ask, don't tell.
Don't
policy.
ask, don't tell, that's right. And a lot of times parents are doing the same thing with their kids, but what they don't know is the person to introduce these topics to kids first immediately becomes the expert in the kid's head. And so are we allowing Dr. Google? Are we allowing the school counselor, the health teacher, friends, magazines, older brothers? So one of our friends is older brothers. Are they becoming the experts, or are you establishing, I'm the expert? There's nothing you're going to hear out there that I don't know about first, because that is going to be who kids go to. And sometimes you don't have to introduce all the things. Sometimes, like Amy has a story, you'll have opportunities present themselves where all of a sudden looks like it is now time to introduce them to this topic.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard it I was 7 years old. I was at a Christian camp, and I had 3 buddies, and the fact is we were really tight. And all of a sudden he says, I got something I want to tell you guys. So we got in a little circle, and we laughed like crazy while he was telling us about it. He says, it can't be true, it can't be true. And I'm just saying, 7 years old. Mm-hmm. But I wonder how many parents actually sit down with their kids, and you're right. All the scientific studies show the parents, if they talk, they are the most important person that their kid will talk to. They might not think so. Mm-hmm. Kids might not give you that impression, but they are. Mm-hmm. And they'll think of what the parents say before they talk about anything else. Now, Amy, I want to go to you, okay? And that is that you have a funny story to me that illustrates what parents are facing today. You got 4 wonderful kids. Yep. So you're sitting at home and you're watching the TV. You're probably trying to think of something else to write in a book, and your kids are all there. And what happened?
Yeah, we were watching Nickelodeon. We had just arrived in Texas. We were not native Texans, and so Texas summers are brutal. So we were hiding out inside, just watching cartoons, eating an unholy amount of popsicles. And a show had come on called The Loud House, and my kids had been watching it, and there was a Valentine's Day episode to where all these kids in this family, there were 12 children in one family, all of them were girls except for one boy, and they were trying to leave notes for their crushes within the show. And one of the sisters was like, well, I don't know if Sam is gonna like this Valentine, and so her sisters are encouraging her, oh, you just gotta give it to Sam. And every time they referenced this Sam character, they would always cut to a scene where it was a boy with like the hair and the guitar, he just looked glorious. And so you think that Sam is a boy. And then at the end of the episode, she puts the note in the locker and runs away, because that's how you do things in middle school. And all of a sudden, the guitar boy walks past the locker, and it was the girl who was behind him that stops instead. And she opens the note, and she gets those googly eyes, the little heart love googly eyes, and so does the other character. And it's all of 2 seconds, and it was over. And I was like, oh my gosh, here now we're seeing bisexuality within childhood characters on TV right there in the cartoon. And if I had been flipping through Pinterest, I would have missed it. And I was praying that my boys had missed it. And luckily 2 of them had, but my oldest is watching and goes, wait a second, Mom. In the other episode, she had a crush on a boy, but now she has a crush on a girl? What is that? And now I was floored with the idea that now I have to talk about bisexuality to my child. And at that time, I was woefully unprepared.
Yeah. Lindsay, let me just ask you, because you're the lawyer, you've got all the degrees, you've done all the studies, and the fact is that you're also teaching college kids. I'm just saying, do they realize that when they become parents, or even with the parents that you've talked with and all the conferences that you've had, when you talk about parents having little sex talks with their kids, what kind of results do you get back from them? What kind of feedback?
Parents are nervous about having these kinds of conversations with their kids. What if they get something wrong? What if they tell them too much? What if they tell them too little? Where is the line for them? We're finding that parents are even uncomfortable saying words like penis and vagina. Mm-hmm. And if we're uncomfortable saying basic anatomical words, then it's going to be a problem, right? And so we're hoping that by reading our book and by listening to our podcast, parents will feel confident entering into these kinds of conversations with their kiddos.
Yeah, and I want to say this, is that here is the book that I want you folks to get. It's called Mama Bear Apologetics. What do mama bears have to do with apologetics?
So Mama Bear Apologetics came about because I recognized that women were, and especially moms, were kind of this overlooked demographic within apologetics. Every apologetics conference I went to had a lot of men, but a lot of times it's because there was no childcare, and so someone was staying home with the kids. But when you look at who is getting the questions first, it is always mom who gets the questions first. And I realized she's the youth pastor, and it's not that she knows more, it's that the kids will walk right past dad who's sitting on the couch watching TV, and they will go into mom who's in the bathtub shaving her legs to ask her the question when dad could have easily sufficed. She is getting those questions. And the other thing that I noticed is that moms will do stuff that they would never do for themselves, but they will do it for their kids. And when they see their kids' faith being attacked, that's when they rise up and they become a whole different beast altogether. So we say a lot of times on the podcast, this might not affect your faith, but it might affect your children's. And so mama bears, when they realize, oh, no, this world is not going to rip faith away from my child, they will rise up and do what they need to do, and you'll see a whole different beast come
Yeah,
out.
now we're talking about what are our schools teaching our kids about sex? And a lot of parents have asked us that question because they don't know. And the first thing they want to know is our government covering this? I mean, are they passing out literature to all of our schools? And if you Google this, you'll find out this answer. No federal laws dictate or mandate what sex education should look like or how it should be taught in public schools. Those are made at the state and local level. So I thought, well, that's interesting. The government doesn't do anything. Then I thought, well, is the CDC a part of the government? And I thought, yeah, they are. So what do they have to say? Well, the CDC says that they're passing out information to the schools by the bucket loads of what they call good health education. And let me give you a little idea what they say. Quality sexual education programs share many characteristics. These programs are the strategies that are relevant and engaging for all students. Now we're talking right down to kindergarten here. And we have to address the health needs of all students, including the following. Get this one now. The students identifying as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, and they go on. They need to connect students to sexual health and other health services at school or in the community. We're going to find out what that means. We're going to engage parents, families, and then community partners, which is an interesting phrase, in school programs. Now, they have a boatload of information. People, you can go on Google, and the fact is you can find out what the CDC is passing out. And they've got a whole list of things. And then I thought, well, where are the state legislatures? You guys, when you wrote your book in 2017, you said that, what was it, about almost 40%, 30 to 40% of all of our schools were already teaching stuff like that came from SECUS. Actually, their full name is Sexual Information and Education Council of the United States. I thought it was a government program. It is not. This is an independent source. And they're already on volume 2. And folks, you can go online and you can order this book, and it's about 78 pages of information that they want your kid to know about. And I was very interested in who funded this and who put the seed money into this.
Yes.
And in your book, you told me, tell the folks.
That was Hugh Hefner that put the money into this program.
Yeah, I did a program way back when on Hugh Hefner and the Playboy philosophy, and I had his favorite bunny come on the program, and she had come to know the Lord, and Hugh sent a fellow that he actually sent to seminary for 4 years so that he could talk back to Christians like me. Wow. And he wasn't a Christian, but he went to seminary to figure out what to say to Christians like me. And I just switched it over to her, and she took it away, and she says, let me tell you, and she went down the list of what was happening at the Playboy Mansion and in the clubs. And it was unbelievable, the list that she gave. When we talk about SECUS, one of the things that I noticed when I read their manual is they say with sex education, we have a golden opportunity, get this, to create a culture shift tackling the misinformation, shame, and stigma that create the basis for many of today's sexual and reproductive health and rights issues like the following. And I want you guys to define these words. They want to have a culture shift, and they want to have reproductive justice.
So reproductive justice, we have a phrase in both of our books called linguistic theft. It's where you take familiar sounding words and then you change the definition and then kind of import your own propaganda and your own political assessment into this phrase. So reproductive justice, anything that's justice related means that there is something that's unequal or inequitable. And so the idea behind this is, since men will never be forced to carry a baby to term in their bodies, in order to have that equality and therefore justice, a woman should never be forced to carry a baby to term in her body. That way you can have equality. So the reproductive justice is a fancy way of saying abortion choice.
Yeah, I got another one here for you. They say you want to have a culture shift tackling the misinformation, shame, and stigma. The next one here that they want to teach is LGBTQ equality. So I'll shift it over to you.
I think what we're finding is that the old sex talk that used to happen with kids is no longer going to be sufficient. Parents have to prepare their kids earlier and earlier now, before they enter the school, so that they know what they're going to encounter. They're hearing about things like lesbianism and being homosexual and being bisexual at a very young age in the public schools.
Yeah.
And parents just simply don't want to talk. It's so uncomfortable. You having these conversations with your kids makes you tense and your hands get sweaty and you don't want to say certain words, but we have to. We have to be able to confront the culture before the culture inundates our kids with things that we want to control the truth. We want to make sure they have truth and knowledge before they're confronted with
You're
lies.
right. Amy, another big one that they always have, and it's in all of the books. This is one company, and they probably cover most of the United States. But there are other companies that are also putting out sexual curriculum that state legislatures can get for their own state. And I'm saying, if you read those, they all come up almost with the same kind of stuff. And one of the key words is equity. What is equity?
So equity is, at its most basic sense, is equal outcome. And with regards to LGBTQ ideology and why this shift, this culture shift is occurring with our kids, is we were all raised with this idea of there is male and female and together they can have a baby. Well, now our culture has shifted to embrace queer theory and gender ideology, which we'll get into in a later episode, to where now kids have to be taught, okay, well, what about being lesbian? What about being bi or questioning or queer? What exactly does that mean? So that has to not only be taught to children at a young age, but it also has to be cultivated with our kids so they have the opportunity to experiment and see whether or not it suits their lifestyle and what they want to pursue. And that's what's considered equitable. It's not just this teaching from there's male, there's female. There's also the ability to be able to participate in different lifestyles. And if a child is allowed to engage in all of these lifestyles, that's what's considered equitable.
Yeah, I did a little research and I wanted to know how many gender identities are out there. And I thought, you know, the old Google one was like 58. And I thought, that's a lot right there. And now I find out that Medicine Net now says there are 72, 78, something like that. And I thought it keeps on growing. Okay?
Right, and we don't even understand what they mean for some of them. We were going through the lists and it's...
Tell them some of the things you found.
Depending on your feelings.
Depending on the season.
Weather can change.
The weather can change your gender identity.
If the weather's changing your gender, I don't think you understand what gender is.
Nor is it immutable.
And how do parents keep up? Right? It's constantly changing and culture keeps hitting our kids younger and younger. It's not just Loud House. It's shows on, I mean, we're talking about Sesame Street and shows that we grew up with that were safe. And now we have to have those conversations because TV is having those conversations.
Amy, tell them what the executive for Sesame said about the Family Day.
Yeah, so Christy Torrell-Corbin, she's the head of childhood intervention and education. She responded to a Family Day episode on Sesame Street where all different sorts of families were presented. There was a heterosexual couple, a single parent couple, and a homosexual couple, and all of them had kids. And so the child of the homosexual couple asked the others, well, does your family like to dance together? Well, so does mine. Does your family like to cook together? Well, so does mine. I mean, it was super innocuous. And what Christy Torrell-Corbin responded, she said, oh, this is so great because children, when they're young, they're so accepting. It's only later when they are taught biases that they adopt these biases. Now, if you switch out biases with Christian worldview, you'll know the intention. The intention is the evangelization of the child with the secular sexual worldview from a young age because they're banking on parents not speaking to their children, so they know that they can lay a secular foundation upwards to the age of 12 when kids finally hit that middle school lock-in at church.
Yeah, we're going to do a program on the genderbread person, genderbread identity, and the fact is that that starts at kindergarten. That's coming up in another program.
Yep.
But when our Christian people that are watching hear this, you would think they would be mad about this and they would protest. And the Hartford Institute did a study, and here's why I say the church should make a difference. We don't hear a peep out of the church. We're wrong in doing that. We should have this from the pulpit. We should have this down in the classes, and we don't. But the Hartford Institute said in our country, roughly 350,000 religious congregations are in our country. And here's how it breaks down. 48.9% of Americans are Protestants, 23% are Catholics, and according to the Gallup poll in 2023, 68% of Americans identified themselves as Christians, which amounts to, listen to this, 210 million Americans out of the 333 million that are here in this country. Now, we all believe as Christians that the Bible is our authority and that's where God gives his moral commands. And yet we're also aware that Christians sometimes don't read the Bible, sometimes they don't follow the rules. And so Pew did a study on this and interviewed Christians and found out that 57% of Christians believe that premarital sex in a committed relationship was just fine. 50% said that hookups, sleeping with someone you're not committed to, was okay. According to another study, upwards, this is what got to me, talking about our kids that are 18 to 29, that are not married. 80% of those people, 18 to 29, have already had sex, 80% of them. Those are people in our church. So the church is not doing the job. And we're going on into the next areas where we're talking about the stages of what the sex curriculum is actually teaching the kids. But this is kind of just a wake-up call program. What do you want them to know? I'll give you 1 minute.
Okay, I think just one of the most absolutely important things that we said already is the first person to talk to kids about this becomes the expert in your mind. And so I just want to encourage all the parents to be asking their kids, what have you already heard? And if you sometimes need a little distance, you say, what have your friends said about this? Because sometimes kids are embarrassed to say what they think, but oh, if I can pawn it off on my friends. And especially this is good if you're in the car where you're not having that eyeball to eyeball conversation, because you'd be amazed at the kind of conversations you can have when you're not eyeball to eyeball and you're distancing it as if you're talking about what their friends are saying. And I would say there's so many opportunities, especially around June, which is Pride Month, to say, hey, what have you heard about that? What have you heard about the rainbow? What have you heard about that picture? Just start asking them questions, finding out what they already know, and then you can kind of say, do you have any questions? And if you ever have questions about that, you can always come to me, and you establish yourself as there is nothing that you're going to hear out there that you have not heard at my kitchen table first.
All right, folks, you can find the information we've been talking about in this book that we're offering, Mama Bear Apologetics Guide to Sexuality. All right, this is a solid book, and I think you're going to want this, and you will be surprised at all the information that's in this book. Next week, we're going to talk about worldviews, and we're going to talk about how a person's worldview influences their sex life, why it's so important. And we're going to actually basically start off with there's two. There's one that says there's a God that created us, has a purpose, and the fact is he's got his own moral laws. The other one is you have no God, and so we just somehow popped up and we're here by accident and we're evolving, and since we're evolving, we can evolve into even more, and we're evolving into like 72, 78 different genders so far. That's just one of the things that a secular worldview will give you. We're going to talk about other things. What does your worldview tell you about sex? That's next week. I hope that you'll join me. And I'd like you to stay tuned because I got a personal word for you in just a minute.